listening Roundup. I'm William Giger. I'm here with Mr. Jack Buehner. Nice to meet you.
All right, Keith.
Former Penn State alum. Today I'm going to have ask a couple questions. So, tell me, what was your childhood like when you grew up?
I grew up a Lower Highlands Mustang. Actually, I grew up outside of town on Route 21 in a place called Uliti. And then we moved to Hopwood. We really liked Hopwood because there was a lot more to do in Hopwood with playgrounds and basketball courts and things. So it was a great time here. Back then, we didn't have the technology that you guys have, whether it's texting or computers or so on. So therefore, there's a lot more play time, riding bikes, playing football, playing basketball, those types of sled riding. Today with the snow, sled riding comes up, but it was just a good, wholesome activity and a great time to grow up here in Pennsylvania.
Well, when you lived in, you said Uliti, correct?
Uliti.
What was it like when you lived there?
Well, really, I've been out that way a few times. It hasn't changed much, quite frankly. Sometimes little communities in southwestern Pennsylvania don't change real quickly. So as I noticed that it hasn't changed hardly at all. The house is still there. Most of the landscaping around is still the same. So it hasn't changed much at all.
I know when you're growing up, you played a bunch of sports. Well, who got you into playing sports?
It was probably more my brothers, my father. My father loved sports and certainly wanted us to play and really helped us to play. But he said at the end of the day, it was our decision. He didn't force us to play, but he really wanted us to have a great time, enjoy athletics. He said that we didn't really have to work. We didn't have to have an after-school job. He wanted us to be a youngster and do the best we could in school, and certainly go ahead and do the best in after-school activities. So he really encouraged us to play sports, and as many sports as we wanted to.
Now, who was very hard? Was your brothers? You said you have brothers. Were they really hard on you as a kid, like growing up?
Yeah, I was the youngest of the three boys, and brother Bill was actually 5 years older than me. Brother Bob was a year older than me. So being the youngest, as you know, Coos, can sometimes, we talk about bullying. Well, mostly the only bullying I ever knew was by my brothers. They didn't allow anybody else to bully me, but they sure did. But I really think that it helped me to be a better person because they made me tough. They made me understand that if I really wanted something, I had to stick up for myself and really be the best that I could be. So I love my brothers, and I love how they helped me through, and they were my best friends as well as my brothers.
Now, they played a real impact in your life as playing sports and like how you are today as well?
Yeah, brother Bill, for instance, being that he was 5 years older than me, when I was in the early junior high, he was late high school, and he was a football player and a basketball player. So he would ask me if I want to go out in the backyard and throw football or shoot basketball. So he really challenged me at all times to be better, and certainly then to help me too. And my brother Bob did the same, even though Bob and I were more about the same age and the same size and things. Actually, then I grew taller than my brother Bob. Bob's 5'10" and I'm 6'5", so there was a difference there. But both guys, and Bob and I played football together. Bob actually had a full scholarship to Tulsa University at the end of his high school career, and I went to Penn State.
Now, tell me about that. When you're younger, how were you always a small kid until you grew 6'5"?
Yeah, actually, again, being the youngest, I was the smallest, as traditionally that's the case. But then about in 7th grade, I grew very quickly and passed up both of my brothers. Went from just a regular sized guy in late middle school, and then all of a sudden I'm one of the tallest guys in the school.
Now, what was what got you into sports? What was the first sport you played as a child?
Well, really, it was football and basketball, and actually some baseball. The first, if you really want to put it that way, and which competition sport I actually competed in on the leagues was baseball, because they had a little bit quicker back in the day, because they didn't have organized sports until you got into 7th grade.
I do remember that, actually. I remember my dad told me that.
Yeah. So we had a little bit later start then, which, again, I think it was a good thing that you had an opportunity just to be a kid, ride bikes, just play some sports with your friends or whatever. So baseball, I know I started probably in about 5th or 6th grade at Bailey Park. Back in those days, they had some pretty good leagues there.
Now, going back to 7th grade, you started official organize athletics. Now today, I know there's like Pee Wee leagues or like first, second grade. Do you think that impacts kids today, like saying they want to quit the sport, like say they call burning out, for example?
Yeah, Cruz, I do agree. I was one of the, even though when I was the head football coach here, we did have midget leagues, and certainly I was working with them to try to get them to understand how I really wanted them to coach and how I wanted them to coach properly. And it was very difficult to get the adults in particular to follow along with exactly how you wanted them to coach. And holding them accountable was difficult because we weren't paying them for Lower Highland School District. They were volunteers. So when you're dealing with a volunteer, it's very difficult to make them really accountable. So when I did have parents who would ask me, now, Coach, do you really think my son's in 3rd or 4th grade? Do you think he really should play football? And my first answer was always the same, in that if it were my child, I would rather play in basketball or soccer, something with hand-eye coordination and something that wasn't so physical so early, because young athletes are certainly not mature in any way, whether it's physically or mentally, in my opinion, enough to play the sport of football.
Now, you played the sport, and you also coached the sport of football, and you coach basketball still today as well. And would that impact how you would coach the game while you were playing as well?
Well, certainly when I played, things were coached a little bit different. But still, a lot of the things, I was very fortunate to play here at Lower Highlands and then at Penn State University, who most consider one of the greatest coaches of all time in college athletics. So I took a lot of what he did, the positive impacts that I felt, and brought that back to Lower Highlands. So as a player, am I answering your question right, or are you asking me about the difference between how I played it and how I coached it?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Again, I felt that when I was growing up, or playing for my high school coach and then coach Paterno and the assistant coaches, they always asked me a couple of simple things just to do the best I can. The premise of going out and always being the best you can. And if you weren't getting better, you were getting worse. And so I always tried to, as a player, I always tried to instill that in myself. And then when I became a coach, I always want my players to go by that same creed. Certainly always to try to be as good as you can be, and that's all we can really be.
Now, I know you played football. Now, as your senior year, you were in the Big 33 game against players from Ohio and Pennsylvania. I know you played against Archie Griffin. Well, how was your experience with that?
Oh, it was great. When I look back and the opportunities I had as a youngster, and to some of the guys now who are actually in the Hall of Fame, when you're playing and you're really competing against these athletes, you don't know that that they're going to be in the Hall of Fame as a professional. Actually, one of my teammates at Penn State was a Heisman Trophy winner, and certainly when you're competing on a daily basis, because he was offense, I was defense, you don't realize the greatness that some of these guys are going to have, even though in your heart you probably feel that they are special. As a person, I know that John Cappelletti was.
Yes.
So again, competing or playing with some of the greats in sports makes you feel good as a person, and then it really helps me when I coach my athletes here that I have really something to give. That certainly I reached the pinnacle of my sport when I went on to Penn State, and then even a short opportunity for the pros. So it makes me feel really good that the students have somebody who certainly has been down that road, and maybe they'll be more willing to listen. Certainly that you have those great things behind you that you have in your little bag, so to speak.
Now, when you played defensive tackle in Penn State. When did you get your first full playing time as a player on the varsity team?
Well, at Penn State it was difficult to get that early full-time playing time. I'm so proud. Actually, things were so different then, because my freshman year, freshmen weren't eligible, and certainly Joe Paterno said that he would not play freshmen anyway. By the next year, certainly he did make freshmen at Penn State able to play. So I think that his philosophy certainly had to change. We all have philosophies, and sometimes you have to be willing to change your philosophies. So anyway, obviously that freshman year, was a wash because I understood going in that we weren't going to be able to play at Penn State, but I wanted to be part of a special program. We hadn't had a lot of success as far as championship goes here at Lower Highlands when I was a student athlete here. So I wanted to go to some place that really had a lot of success. And up in the East Coast, this whole side of the nation, Penn State was the only school really, other than Ohio State, who was having a lot of success on the football field. So I chose Penn State, my home state. And, as a sophomore, I played behind two players at that time, Randy Crowder and Mike Hartenstein, who both went on to have fantastic careers, and obviously were older than me. Mike played for the Chicago Bears for 13 years, and Randy Crowder played for the Miami Dolphins for 11 years. So I had to kind of wait in line. So it wasn't. I did play sparingly as a sophomore. We were the only team in the nation to be undefeated.
Oh yeah.
13 and 0.
Oh, I do remember.
Yeah, the only team in the nation. It wasn't until my junior year that I got extensive playing time.
Now, speaking about like Joe Paterno, what's your most memorable Joe Paterno moment as a player?
Well, there were many of them. You know, when you're at a big program like Penn State, especially if you're a defensive tackle, all coaches have an area of what they consider their expertise. And Coach Paterno, I felt more at home on the offensive field. When we would practice, we would have 4 fields.
Oh, really?
And depending on if we played on a synthetic surface, we would practice all week on a synthetic surface. If we were playing on a grass surface that week, we would practice on the grass surface. But offense would practice on one field, defense would practice on the other, and foreign team guys or scout guys, if you might want to call them, they would practice versus the defense and vice versa versus the offense. So really, I didn't see a whole lot of Coach Paterno on the field. He didn't really coach defensive tackles. So probably the biggest thing about the biggest impact that I saw and was impressed with Coach Paterno, how precise every single one of his practices were. We had anywhere from 80 to 95 players on the football team, depending on injuries or whatever. And there was never wait time. There was always something scheduled for you to do at a high rate of speed. So practices in the summer, I was a thin guy. I didn't weigh much. I weighed like 237 and played defensive tackle. It's big. Nowadays, people will weigh upwards 300 pounds and play defensive tackle. But I would lose, in the summertime, I would lose 10 to 12 pounds in practice because we moved so much and I would lose so much water weight. But I guess I was impressed on how he ran his operations and how he had everybody, whether it was his assistant coaches or the players, in constant movement and knowing what they were going to do. So they were certainly prepared at game time.
Now, you don't have to answer this question, but looking back at it now as an alum, with the whole Jerry Sandusky situation that so suppose on he knew about it, what do you think about it now?
No, it's an excellent question because I've had so many people ask me that question. And I can only tell you, I can only judge a person by how they treated you and how they were around you. And quite frankly, I find it hard to believe. Certainly, probably all of us know somebody in our life that something might happen to that you find it hard to believe. But just the Jerry Sandusky that I knew would never do that. Of course, these supposed acts happened after I was out of school. So who knows what's in a man's heart or mind. But I know that it was very frustrating, hurtful, and certainly you feel for anybody that would have been in that situation. But no, it was a shock, quite frankly, a shock that I still to this day find it very difficult to believe.
Now you said Jerry Sandusky, did he coach you as you went to Alum?
Well, Jerry actually started to recruit me. Jerry was from Washington, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I was a linebacker and tight end in high school. So Jerry's recruiting area was the Uniontown, Washington's area. Obviously, Penn State was a national recruiting school. So guys were assigned to different sections of the country. Jerry being from Western Pennsylvania, they felt he could recruit well here because he was from here, had roots here. So he started out recruiting me, but right at the last minute, Coos, in the recruiting process, University of Maryland was really pulling all the stops, so to speak, to try to get me. Jerry Claiborne, the head coach, almost lived at my house. He wanted me to go to Maryland so bad. So at the last second, I signed letter of intent to play for Maryland, and then a guy by the name of Sever Toretti, who was the head guy of the recruiting at those days for Penn State, he took over for Jerry and finished the process of signing me. Then they moved me. I was recruited as a linebacker, but I kind of figured I wouldn't play linebacker, and then that's when I ended up a defensive tackle and played for a guy named Jim O'Hora.
Now looking back on that, do you regret not signing Maryland?
You know what, Coos, I think you always, and again, the reason I say this is because all of us as players only envision one thing, certainly, and that's playing. And playing time was limited at Penn State for everybody. There were so many good players, and that's why we're the only team in the nation to be 13-0. You know, players win games. It's not necessary. If you're at the University of Alabama today, Lou Saban is a very good coach, just like Joe Paterno was. But I guarantee you one thing, Lou Saban has the best players probably in the country. Yes. Everybody knows that. So, and I'd like to think that was the case. And I knew that going in, that playing time would be limited in that way. Probably the only thing I wish that, one thing as a player, you always want playing time. But no, I don't look back. I had great friends, great education, and a great time at Penn State. So I'm certainly very proud to be a Nittany Lion.
Look back on like the Joe Paterno coaching. After he was done coaching, he ended up dying, passing away. Then Bill O'Brien took over for a couple years. And then he ended up going to the NFL. Now James Franklin's there. They went to the Rose Bowl, ended up losing 52-49. How do you think he's taken over that program?
I think he's done a great job. Again, knowing the facilities they have there and the football bed of opportunity is at Penn State, it doesn't shock me or surprise me at all once they got past those sanctions that Penn State would be either as good or better than they had been because of such a fine place that Penn State is and all the facilities they have. So it doesn't surprise me that they're doing so well.
Well, you're here, folks. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Buehner.